Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to West Virginia Astronomy. Here I'm Jonathan, and I wanted to do a quick video about calibration frames and what they are and how to take them correctly. And so stick around and I'll show you how I get that done using my DSLR and my cool astronomy camera. There is a problem when you try to take an image with a camera lens, and that is the shape of the camera lens. It is oval, and it causes little shadows in the corners of the images, which is called vignetting. And during these long exposures, you also pick up what is called digital noise. You'll notice that there's these little spotty, grainy looking spots when you zoom in to the image, and that's what you call digital noise. And it is a problem with every camera. Every digital camera that you get will pick up this digital noise. So what we do, we take calibration frames, which is putting a cap on a telescope, and you take a bunch of frames with to get a good readout of that noise pattern on your camera sensor. So there are different types of calibration frames that you need to take when you're doing deep sky images. You take flat frames, you take dark frames, and you take bias frames or dark flat frames. And all of these have their own specific things that they do to improve the image, and I'm going to try to go over those things and show you how I correctly take those calibration frames to fix these things that your camera sensor tends to pick up when imaging the night sky. So we will start with talking about light frames, and light frames are just pictures of whatever target you're taking a picture of. So say you got a 3-minute exposure on that you just finished, that is considered a light frame. So we'll move on to dark frames. Now dark frames are, you want everything on your camera to remain the same, and what I mean is your ISO settings, your temperature, and all that need to stay exactly the same. Your shutter speed, all that, and the length of your exposure needs to stay exactly the same. The only difference, you put the cap on your telescope or your camera lens, and you take generally I like to take about 50 of these to get a good readout of that noise pattern on your camera sensor. So they're real simple, they're easy to take. The main thing is they have to be the same temperature as your light frames. Remember that if you're not using a cooled regulated camera, that you need to take your dark frames with enough time at night where the temperature stays the same. And that's one of the downfalls of using a DSLR, is for this fact you have to cut your image sessions short, so you can have enough time to take your dark frames. And that's why a lot of people recommend moving on to a cooled astronomy camera, because you can take a set of dark frames, and because you regulated that temperature, you can use those same dark frames every single night, so you don't have to cut your image session short anymore. And yeah, they're very simple to take, but with the DSLR, like I said, you have to take those every single night, because you can eventually build up a dark library using a DSLR if you if the temperature kind of stays the same throughout the summer or the winter, and you get it set one night and the next night the temperature is the same, you can reuse those dark frames again, as long as your ISO setting is the same, and your shutter speed is the same and all that. So that's all there is to dark frames. They're real easy to take. It's just finding the time to take them. So okay, now we're going to talk about some flat frames. Flat frames are used to correct any dust spots on your telescope or your camera lens or your camera sensor, anything like that that you pick up during a long exposure. Sometimes you see these little spots, and these flat frames will help to eliminate any dust spots that are on a telescope. And there are different ways that people take these flat frames, and I'll just show you how I do mine. And I use a light panel and a white t-shirt, and I'll show you how to get that done. we have the ASI air open here. What we're going to do, we're going to go over here. I'm going to slew the telescope. I'm going to slew this to where it's straight up and down. I'm going to take a white t-shirt here, and we're going to set it on top of the telescope here. Okay, and now we got our light panel on. So if you take a look here, the ASI Air Pro has a feature in the auto run for flats, as you can see here. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to start this. We're going to say flat. And it says auto here. So what we're going to do, we're going to click OK. We're going to check the auto setting here. So I'm going to click on, we're on auto, and we'll do one of them just to test. It's calculating the exposure. Okay, now it's saying that this is the correct output for the flat frames. Which it says an average of 36,000, which in my opinion is a little high. So what I like to do, I'll go back here to auto, reset the progress, and we're just going to go back to preview. So we're going to try 0.2 second exposure. I'm going to click OK, it's shooting. Okay, that's too high. So what we do, we'll go to 0.05 exposure. You want your minimum, you want your average here to be about 29,000. So 0.05, we'll go to 0.02 and try that one. Okay, that's a little low, so what we're going to do, we're going to go to auto run, and we're going to set the exposure 0.35. We're going to test it with 1. So here we go. I'm going to shoot and see. Okay, I messed up. 0.035. Done. Okay. And we're going to try that. Okay, it says the average is 37, so we'll take it down just one more. We'll go to 0.03. Okay, we'll try that. Okay. Now that's what I like to see here. I like to see it about right there. So I would go ahead and go back here, reset the progress, go up here and change the number to, I usually like to take 35 of these. Okay. Now let me push start, and the ASI Air Pro does its thing, and it should stay at an average of about 32,000. So when that gets to 35 and finishes, what you're going to do, let's just say it finished. So we leave the exact same settings here. We turn this off. Okay. Now we remove the white t-shirt and we stick the cap on the telescope. And keeping the same exposures as your flats, you do 35 more, except you change this to bias. Now these are actually dark flats, but there is no selection here for dark flat, so we choose bias. We'll keep the exposure the same, the gain setting the same, everything the same. We just put the cap on, and then you start your exposures there. Sorry about the dogs, guys. Okay, so when that gets done, that will be your bias frames. So you'll have your lights, your flats, your darks, and your bias. So it's as simple as that, guys. I don't use the auto feature on the ASIO Pro because it doesn't really give me a set average that I'm happy with, so I do it this way. But anyway, that's how you get it done using a cool Astronomy camera. DSLR, you take flats the same way. I got here the DSLR with the Rokinon camera lens, and I got the white t-shirt on with the white panel turned on. So we'll come over here and I'll show you what to look for on your histogram. Okay, if you look here on your menu here, you leave it on the same ISO setting as your light frames, and then you're going to move this from manual or bulb over to AV mode, aperture priority mode. So, and this should give you a correct exposure on your flats. So we're going to go ahead and try one now and see what the histogram looks like. Check your histogram here. You can see that it shows it about halfway over, and that's what you want. So I'll go ahead and set the intervalometer up, and you just fire off about 35 of these. What you're going to do, you're going to turn it back into manual mode, and you turn this to the fastest shutter speed on your camera has, and you put the cap on it. And you take, I like to take about 75 of those. These are called bias frames. And what it does, your camera sensor has what's called banding, which are like little lines from the camera sensor that show up in your images when you do flat frames. So I think the bias kind of helps. They go along with the flat frames and help with that vertical and horizontal banding in your images. So yeah, you just switch it to manual, the fastest shutter speed, put your cap on, and you take, anywhere from 75 to 100 of those, and that's all there is to it. It's pretty easy to do on a DSLR. Like I said, you just put it in aperture priority, and then it'll figure out the correct exposure. So another thing is, you want to make sure when you're taking your flat frames that you don't change the focus at all. Your focus needs to stay exactly the same. So if you're using a camera lens, it's best to use some electrical tape or some kind of duct tape or anything to kind of, if your lens doesn't have a lock on a focus lock on it. Some lenses over here have a little lock that will lock that focus in. Unfortunately, this lens doesn't have it, but it does pretty good. So, on a cheaper lens or something that is a little looser, you could put a piece of tape there. And but to take correct flat frames, and you need the focus point to stay exactly the same. So just make sure you do that before you adjust the focus or anything like that. Alright guys, now that we have all our calibration frames and our light frames, we're going to jump on the computer and kind of look at a single exposure compared next to a stacked image with calibration frames, and you can really see how it really improves the image. So alright guys, here we are on the computer. I'm going to show you here in Astro Pixel processor what a light frame, what a single light frame and a single dark frame, a single flat frame and a single bias or dark flat look like. And and kind of point out what they do to help the image. So here we go. I have open here a stacked image of the blow dryer Galaxy M100. It was 67 300-second exposures stacked with calibration frames, the darks, flats, or I used darks, flats, and dark flats because I was using a cooled astronomy camera. I used dark flats instead of the bias. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to go up here and open just a single light frame, and we're going to look at that. Okay, so I'm not going to neutralize the background or anything so you can really see it here. No saturation. Okay, this is what it looks like straight out of the camera here, and as you can see, it's there's a lot of noise. When you zoom in here, this is what I mean by digital noise here. You can see these little specks here, and the little blue and green, like that's called color noise, and then the actual like grainy pattern, I think that's read noise. But you will have like specks of these blue and green little colors in here, and then as you can see here, this is a hot pixel here, and a hot pixel are just spots of the image. When you zoom in, like right here, you can see this is a hot pixel here. Here's one here. You can tell that it's just it doesn't look natural, and you can kind of tell. Here's another one. So what we're going to do, you can see by this is a 300-second exposure, and you can see there's not much detail in the spiral structure here. The stars look very just pixelated, you know. So that's what just a single frame looks like, okay? And compared to, I'm going to open up a dark frame here. Okay, now this light here, this is not caused from the moon or anything. This is actually called amp glow, and what that is during a long exposure, there's a little light inside the camera, I think, and it causes this glow in the sides of the image. So it's really important to take these dark frames to help balance out that this bright light shining on your images here. So we're going to go ahead and zoom in here, and you can see a lot more on the dark frame, the pixels here, the hot pixels that was picked up on the sensor here. You see that. And sometimes they bleed over into the surrounding pixels here, you can see. So now we're going to look at a stacked dark frame. Okay, now this is the master here. This is a master dark frame of all. This has all. I think it was a total of 30 dark frames stacked together, and you can see it picks up a lot more of those hot pixels here. And if you didn't do these dark frames, all these pixels here would stay in your image. Which with all the stars and the nebula and stuff, it's kind of hard to notice them unless you really zoom in. But the further you get along in this hobby, you really start to notice stuff like that. And so yeah, I mean, you can see right there how much help these dark frames will help. We're going to look at a single flat frame here. Now these were taken with a light panel shining in, and you can see a single exposure here. Okay, and if you're using a camera lens, the distortion will be more significant here in the corners. I did use a field flattener on my telescope, so this might not be the best example to show a flat frame, but anyway, they any dust that was picked up on your camera sensor or anything like that, this will help eliminate that. And there, it's even if like I used a the field flattener. Even if you're using that, it's still good to take your flat frames just to help with any dust, anything like that. So we're going to look at the stacked flat frame here. Okay, so this one is the stacked. You really can't see much of a difference here, but that is this one is 35 stacked flat frames. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the bias frames, or the dark flat frames. Okay, now this you can definitely see all of these kind of lines going across here, this pattern. That's what these bias frames get rid of. I'm pretty sure that's what they're for. Because when you take flats, you pick up this pattern because you're doing such a short exposure that you pick up this pattern, and you use the dark flats to erase these lines in your final image. And they can go either way. I've seen checkered patterns. It's called horizontal and vertical banding, and these really help. I can't stress enough how long I went without taking calibration frames, and when I finally did, it actually my image quality enhanced significantly. So okay, let's look at the stacked master dark flat. Okay, and as you can see, it's picked up all those patterns, the vertical banding and the horizontal banding. And when you're stacking these images, these will help to make your image look really good and clear, and take away any kind of artifacts that are up in the corners, anything like that. So what we're going to do now, we're going to go here and we're going to look at the final stacked image. So remember, the first one was very minimum detail and not a whole lot of there's a lot of noise in it. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at the an auto stretched example here of the blow dryer galaxy with calibration frames. Okay, there we are. And when you zoom in, you can see a lot more structure and detail in these spiral arms. You can see it still picked up some digital noise, and that's constantly a battle. Always trying to minimize the noise in your images, but overall, that compared to the first original 300-second exposure, the difference is undeniable here. And yeah, so if you're not taking calibration frames now, I strongly recommend you learn how to do them, and you will really appreciate the quality of the images that come out of doing this. And yeah, so that's all I got for this video, guys. Hopefully it helped somebody. And I know it was a struggle for me in the beginning to learn how to do all this stuff, but once you learn this stuff, it becomes real easy, really quick, and it becomes part of your everyday workflow. And yeah, so I'm gonna play around with this new data I got here, and yeah, until next time, guys. Cheers, guys.